Well, God bless Australia. And God bless all of you. Our party is a party founded on love for our country, love for each other, and respect for our citizens. That's what makes us different from all other political parties, because we care about our community and we're going to fight hard to protect it. You know, wages and living standards have declined in real terms over the last 10 years. So the Liberals' so-called full employment is not a success at all, but stands as a monument of their failure to deliver a better life for Australians. And if the cost of labour just gets cheaper and cheaper, of course there will be no more jobs. There'll be more jobs, but at what price? I'll tell you the price of our living standards. Australia faces $1 trillion of Liberal Labor debt. It's unprecedented in the nation's history. Home loan interest rates will inevitably rise. They won't just double thanks to the Liberal mountain of debt, they'll quadruple. Inflation in the United Kingdom is currently at 6.2%, and inflation in the United States has reached 7.9%. Currently, 40% of all Australian mortgages are under stress. When home loan interest rates double from 2 to 4%, as we know, 60% of all Australians will lose their homes, lose their mortgages. When loan interest rates go up to 6%, nearly 80% of mortgages in Australia will fail. When Australians lose their home because of increased home loan rates, nothing will stop Australian homes' assets from being sold offshore to foreign buyers, or the government, who would be the only buyers who could print enough money, then lease you back your own home. That's what they want, to control your freedom, your movement and your property. The property market will crash, and Australians who own their own home will see the value of it diminish. Because of the Liberal Labor debt, Australians will become economic slaves in their own country. Save Australia we must. Save Australia we will. Save Australians' homes and families. Australia must act now to save Australian homes, to save our country, our economy, and to protect our freedom and our independence. This is a national crisis. We must preserve the home and wealth each Australian currently has. Home ownership has been the cornerstone of our country for over 70 years. The United Australia Party has high on its agenda to implement policies that will allow younger Australians to enter the market so that they can establish their home, their family, and remain a stability in our community. Australians can never, ever trust the Liberal Party, the Greens or Labor. They have sold out our country. Under Craig Kelly's leadership, the United Australia Party will reassert the government control it has under the Constitution for the benefit of all Australians. By requiring the interest rate on all housing loans to stay, as you know, below 3% for the next 5 years. Only the United Australia Party can ensure that home loan interest rates remain below 3% for 5 years. Australians must vote for the United Australia Party to save their home and to save their family's wealth, even if they work for the ABC. And you know, current projections are that it'll take nearly 250 to 180 years to repay the mountain of debt. But Josh Frydenberg says we won't even start repaying the debt for 10 years after he's left Parliament. Stop generations of Australians becoming economic slaves in their own land. The United Australia Party will deal with a Liberal $1 trillion of debt of mountain head on by implementing measures designed to protect the Australian economy from the impact of the failures of the political class of the Liberal, Labors and the Greens. As you know, Australian iron ore is supplying the boom in manufacturing in Asia, upon which the economies of China, Hong Kong, Korea and the rest of Asia depend. Asia's reliant upon Australian iron ore. Without it, they just can't function. Their standard of living will be destroyed. That is the reality of the tens of trillions of dollars that has been invested since the 1950s in China, Japan and Korea, based on the supply of cheap, Australian iron ore. Australia supplies over 70% of their supply line. Their prosperity, the livelihood of all their people are linked to exports from Australia. As I said in my earlier speech at the Press Club, Australia has become a quarry upon which Asia bases its prosperity. And we know in the 1960s the Australian government had export licences from our iron ore, where importers of the ore paid the export licence. And the United Australia Party will introduce a 15% export licence for all iron ore exports from this country, and we'll pledge the proceeds from such a licence to be used for the retirement of the $1 trillion of Liberal Labor which face Australia at the moment. The export licence proceeds will be paid by China, Japan, Korea and the rest of Asia. They'll pay off the Liberal Labor debt within 20 years and in the process save Australians from high interest rates and the burden. We will save our country's economy and we'll keep Australia's AAA credit rating. With a cap on the bank home loan lending rates below 3% for the next 5 years, the United Australia Party will save 6 million Australian homes, defend prosperity and freedom of all Australian families, and most importantly, independence of our country. We cannot allow the whole country just to be dispossessed just because Labor and Liberal parties have recklessly run up debt. And you know, our other big policy, of course, is Australian superannuation, because we're among the largest pools of capital in the world. But much of Australia's super funds are invested overseas. So just as John Curtin in World War II brought back our troops to the Middle East to defend Australia against imminent attack from the Japanese, we'll bring back Australian super to defend Australia at a time of economic crisis under a United Party government. At least $1 trillion of Australian super can be brought back by the sale of shares in Europe and the United States. And it will be required by law to instead be invested in our country, to secure our citizens' economic prosperity and to maintain our independence. You know, Australia provides a tax incentive for our super, and Australia needs to benefit from its investment. Australians work hard and deserve to have their super invested where Australia needs it most. In Australia, working for Australians, now. So the message for all Australians is that if you're happy with everything that's being done now, if you think it's sufficient, if it's enough for you and your family, then vote again for Scott Morrison Albanese. But if you really care about our country, for all the reasons I've set out, if you believe as I do that an interest rate of no more than 3% on our home loans for the next 5 years will secure yours and your neighbours' future, if you believe we must use Australian natural resource advantages to repay the $1 trillion mountain of debt that Liberal and Labor have left us and burdened Australians with, and if you believe that we should bring back $1 trillion of Australian super to create real jobs and higher wages and a better living standard as we go forward in this century, then you must vote for the United Australia Party. You know, courage. Courage is one of the rarest commodities in politics and public life. Public service has no reward. History and knowing you're doing all that you can for your fellow citizens is its only reward. There is no person elected to public office in the world that has more courage, more devotion than the leader of the United Australia Party, Craig Kelly. To lead our nation at a time of its greatest peril, please give a big, big welcome for the next Prime Minister of Australia, Craig Kelly.